There's something about the INFJ mind that leaves people spinning. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes not. Friends, co-workers, even close family members often say the same thing. I don't get them. I can't figure them out. They're mysterious, deep, kind, but also strange, intense, and confusing. Being close to an INFJ can feel like trying to read a book with half the pages missing. This video is not meant to insult INFJs. In fact, it's the opposite. It's here to explain why INFJs often drive people a little bit crazy, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because their minds are so different from what most people expect. INFJs have a rich inner world. They don't just think, they process. They reflect. They sense what's beneath the surface. To some people, that feels like magic. To others, it feels like a puzzle they can't solve. This constant feeling of, I can't quite figure you out, is what leads people to say that INFJs drive them insane. And it's not just about being misunderstood. It's about the way INFJs communicate, the way they feel, and the way they move through the world. Their actions don't always match what others assume. They say one thing, but they mean 10. They nod and smile, but behind that smile is a storm of thought, memory, and emotion. They care deeply, but not always loudly. They offer advice without being asked, and it's often so accurate it scares people. They seem calm on the outside, but they're often burning on the inside. They can be extremely kind, and suddenly shut down when they feel overwhelmed. They forgive easily, but never forget. They'll give all of themselves to someone they love, then disappear without warning if something feels off. All of this leaves people confused. Not because the INFJ is trying to be confusing, but because the way their mind works doesn't follow the rules most people are used to. This video breaks down 6 specific reasons why the INFJ mind drives people insane. And by insane, we don't always mean angry or annoyed. Sometimes it's fascinated. Sometimes it's frustrated. Sometimes it's just plain confused. But the effect is always strong. We'll go into the psychology, the personality layers, and the daily behaviors that make INFJs so hard to pin down. Whether you are an INFJ or you know one, this will help make sense of it all. Let's start with reason number 1, something that often feels like mind reading to the people around them. Reason number 1. Their deep intuitive insights feel like emotional mind reading. One of the strongest traits of an INFJ is their intuition. But it's not like the casual gut feeling most people talk about. INFJ intuition is something deeper. It's slow and quiet, but extremely sharp. They notice patterns, feelings, body language, tone, and even energy in the room. All of this blends together in their mind and often leads to insights they can't fully explain. Imagine being around someone who always knows what you're feeling, even when you're trying to hide it. Imagine them guessing what's bothering you without you saying a word, or predicting how a situation will turn out before anything happens. That's what INFJs do naturally. To others, it can feel like emotional mind reading. Not because the INFJ is reading minds in a magical way, but because they're absorbing so much without people realizing it. They connect dots that most people don't even see. This kind of insight can make people feel exposed. It can also make them feel uncomfortable, especially if they are used to keeping their emotions guarded. When someone walks into the room and sees straight through your mask, it can be both powerful and unsettling. Even INFJs don't always understand how they do it. Their minds are constantly gathering small details. A glance, a pause, a shift in tone. The room feels different, and they notice. They may not always speak on it, but they register it. Over time, these small pieces form a full picture. Sometimes, they'll blurt out the truth in a way that feels shocking. They'll say what someone was feeling before that person even had the words for it. This can make people feel like the INFJ is too intense, too strange, or too close. The reaction is often, "How did you know that?" or "You're freaking me out right now." It's not intentional. INFJs aren't trying to make people uncomfortable. They're just deeply tuned in. But not everyone is ready for that kind of insight. Some people feel invaded. Some feel judged. Others just feel seen in a way they're not used to. There's also the issue of being misunderstood. When INFJs share these insights, they often don't come with logic that others can follow. The INFJ just knows. But in a world that values facts, data, and step-by-step explanations, that's not always enough. People may question them, dismiss them, get defensive, or even feel threatened. This makes INFJs pull back. They stop sharing what they sense. They learn that not everyone wants to hear what they see, and so they become more guarded. They keep their insights to themselves. But the mind doesn't stop processing. It keeps observing, connecting, and warning them about things others haven't even noticed. This distance, this pulling back, can make others feel even more uneasy. They know the INFJ is holding something, but they don't know what. That makes the INFJ seem mysterious or even suspicious. It's a cycle. INFJs are rarely trying to play games. But the way their intuition works creates tension. It can make them look like they know too much or are hiding too much. And the people around them feel unsure. They don't know how much the INFJ sees or understands. So they respond with confusion, or frustration, or fear. And that's how a strength like intuition ends up being something that drives people insane. It's not the insight itself. It's how it feels to be on the receiving end of it. When someone understands you better than you understand yourself, it's powerful, but also hard to handle. That's the INFJ mind. Quiet, observant, and deeply aware. And for many people, that's just too much to take in. Reason number 2. Their empathy can feel overwhelming or suffocating. INFJs are natural empaths. They don't just understand emotions, they feel them. If someone is sad, the INFJ feels it like it's their own sadness. If someone is angry, the INFJ might carry that anger without even knowing where it came from. This deep emotional absorption is part of what makes them so compassionate. But it's also what makes them overwhelming to some people. When you're around an INFJ, you may notice they're always tuned in. They ask how you're feeling. They notice when you're off. They check in often. That sounds kind on paper. And it is. But for people who aren't used to that kind of emotional attention, it can feel like too much. Some people value their emotional space. They want to process things on their own. They don't want to be asked, reminded, or pushed to open up. But the INFJ doesn't always see that line. Not because they're rude, but because their empathy is automatic. They feel the tension, so they want to help. They feel the sadness, so they want to comfort. What ends up happening is emotional pressure. The person might feel like they can't hide anything. Like the INFJ is always watching, always analyzing. And for someone who's not emotionally expressive, that can feel suffocating. INFJs also tend to carry emotional weight without showing it. They'll listen for hours. They'll be the strong one in the room. But they don't always share their own pain. This creates a one-way connection. The INFJ gives and gives, while the other person starts to feel like they owe something in return. That creates guilt or discomfort. And when INFJs don't get the same emotional depth back, they can become withdrawn. They might feel unappreciated or misunderstood. But they won't always say it. They'll just pull away. That sudden shift in energy can feel confusing to the other person. Why did they change? What happened? It's hard to explain unless you know how emotionally connected INFJs truly are. Their empathy is a gift. But it can also feel like emotional pressure. It can make others feel exposed, cornered, or confused. especially when they don't understand why the INFJ is reacting the way they are. Some people may even feel judged when the INFJ is simply reflecting emotion back to them. All of this combines into a strange experience, being around someone who always knows how you feel, always wants to help, but also seems distant and unreadable themselves. It's confusing. It's intense. And for many, it's too much. This emotional intensity is part of what makes INFJs unique. But it's also part of what makes them hard to be around for certain people. It's not about being too emotional, it's about being too tuned in. And when you're that tuned in, the world becomes heavy. And sometimes, the people around you don't know how to handle it. Reason number 3. Their paradoxical nature makes them unpredictable. INFJs often confuse people because they seem to be walking contradictions. One moment, they're open and friendly. The next, they're distant and quiet. They care deeply about others, but they need a lot of alone time. They want deep emotional connection, but they also guard their inner world like a fortress. This paradox is real. And it's not something they do on purpose. It's how they are wired. The INFJ personality is made up of both emotional depth and analytical structure. They are feelers, but they also judge. They are introverted, but their secondary function is focused on the outside world. This mix creates an internal tug-of-war that others often pick up on but can't explain. People around them may feel unsure of where they stand. One day, the INFJ is sharing deep thoughts and feelings. The next day, they don't reply to messages. They disappear. They go silent. Then, out of nowhere, they come back with warmth and openness. This kind of inconsistency can drive people crazy. It makes the INFJ seem unreliable or cold, when in reality, they're simply moving between their emotional and mental needs. They need connection, but they also need recovery. They crave people, but they also need to protect their energy. When INFJs are in a good place, they are some of the most thoughtful, supportive people to be around. They listen. They care. They give their time and energy freely. But when they're drained, they shut down. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. They don't always warn people. They don't always explain. They just vanish for a while. This back and forth confuses people. Friends and partners may feel like they're doing something wrong. They may think the INFJ is upset with them or losing interest. But that's not usually the case. The INFJ is simply resetting. They are processing. They are trying to find peace within themselves before they reconnect. Another part of the paradox is how they express emotion. They often seem calm on the surface, even when they're deeply upset. This creates misunderstandings. Others think everything is fine, until suddenly it's not. The INFJ reaches a breaking point and reacts strongly, leaving people shocked. It's not that they hid the problem on purpose. It's that they didn't want to cause trouble. They didn't want to upset anyone. So they kept it in until they couldn't anymore. This sudden shift from quiet to intense is another reason people find INFJs hard to read. You think you know where they stand, but the emotional undercurrents are much deeper than what's being shown. And when those undercurrents surface, it catches everyone off guard. The INFJ paradox doesn't end with emotions. It also shows up in their opinions and actions. They can be very strong in their values, but flexible in their behavior. They will defend an idea with passion, then quietly change direction later if their intuition tells them to. This makes them look inconsistent to some people. But really, they are just always processing, always adjusting. They are idealists who dream of a better world, but also realists who see how broken things are. They are loving but guarded, gentle but intense, social but introverted. This inner conflict leads to outer confusion. And for those trying to get close to an INFJ, it can feel like chasing shadows. You try to hold on to who they are, but they keep shifting. Not because they're fake, but because they're layered. Their truth is not on the surface. It's buried deep within their thoughts, dreams, fears, and hopes. This is why people struggle. They expect consistency. They expect straight lines. But INFJs move in circles, loops, and spirals. Their path is not always clear, even to them. This unpredictable nature can be hard to handle. But it's also part of what makes them unique. Reason number 4, their perfectionism and ideals raise the bar unreasonably high. INFJs are perfectionists. But it's not always about things like neat handwriting or a clean room. Their perfectionism runs deeper. It's tied to their values, their sense of purpose, and their desire to make everything meaningful. They want their relationships to feel honest and deep. They want their work to have impact. They want their words to matter. And when these things don't live up to their standards, they feel frustrated, not just with others, but with themselves. This need for high standards often shows up in everyday life. In conversations, INFJs may choose their words very carefully. They want to express exactly what they mean. If they say something wrong or unclear, they may replay it in their mind over and over. In relationships, they expect honesty, growth, and emotional depth. They want to understand their partner completely and be understood in return. If they feel a connection is shallow or fake, they struggle to stay in it, even if everything looks fine on the outside. In work or creative projects, INFJs often spend more time planning and perfecting than actually finishing. They fear doing something halfway. They want to get it right the first time. But this can lead to stress, delays, or even burnout. People around them may not understand why the INFJ is being so intense. They may think the INFJ is overreacting or making a big deal out of nothing. But to the INFJ, it's not nothing, it's everything. They put their heart into what they do. They want things to align with their values. They want to make a difference. And they can't just let it go when something feels off. This pressure they put on themselves often spills over into how they view others. If a friend breaks a promise, even a small one, the INFJ may feel deeply hurt. If a partner shows selfishness, they may take it personally. They expect others to hold the same values and standards they do. That's where conflict begins. Others feel like they're being judged, or that they're not good enough. They feel like the INFJ is never satisfied. And sometimes that's true, because the INFJ's inner standard is almost impossible to meet. This perfectionism doesn't mean they're controlling. It means they care too much. They want to do the right thing, say the right thing, be the right person. But this constant pressure wears them down, and it wears others down too. People feel like they're walking on eggshells. They worry about letting the INFJ down. They feel stressed trying to meet expectations that haven't even been spoken. And over time, that creates distance. The INFJ doesn't always realize they're doing this. They think they're being clear. They think they're showing care. But others see it as pressure, as a quiet demand for perfection. And when people can't meet that, they feel like they're failing the relationship. This leads to broken connections, misunderstandings, resentment. INFJs don't mean to create these problems. But their desire for everything to be meaningful and perfect can make people feel like nothing is ever enough. That's why this trait, though rooted in love and care, often becomes a source of tension. It drives people insane not because it's bad, but because it feels impossible to live up to. Reason number 5. Their stress reactions, or grip stress, can be dramatic and puzzling. Most of the time, INFJs seem calm, thoughtful, and controlled. They think before they speak. They reflect on emotions before reacting. They choose their words carefully and try to stay balanced. But when INFJs are pushed too far, something changes. Their normal ways of coping break down. and they enter what some people call grip stress. Grip stress is when an INFJ gets overwhelmed to the point that their normal thinking patterns shut off. Their deep intuition and emotional insight disappear, and a new, unfamiliar version of them takes over. This version is reactive, impulsive, and often hard to recognize. Instead of being quiet and thoughtful, the INFJ may become loud or aggressive. Instead of being careful with words, they might say things they regret. Instead of stepping back to reflect, they may act out suddenly, through overindulging, escaping, or lashing out. This can shock the people around them. Imagine someone who is usually calm suddenly yelling, or someone who is usually private suddenly acting out of character, eating too much, spending impulsively, or picking fights. It's confusing. It's scary. And it's completely out of sync with how the INFJ normally behaves. That's what grip stress looks like. It's not a choice. It's not a planned reaction. It's the result of being pushed past their limits, mentally, emotionally, or physically. Often, this happens after long periods of pressure. INFJs carry a lot inside. They don't always express their stress until it builds up. When that pressure gets too high, their internal system breaks. Their normal strengths become unreachable. Instead of relying on intuition or empathy, they fall into a more basic state of survival. This looks different for every INFJ, but it always feels off. It's not who they really are. It's who they become when they're burned out or cornered. To others, this shift makes no sense. It seems like the INFJ has lost control. It feels like an emotional storm came out of nowhere. And because it's so unexpected, people feel confused, upset, or even betrayed. They wonder what happened to the person they knew. They don't realize this is a stress response, not a change in character. After the grip moment passes, the INFJ usually feels ashamed, embarrassed, exhausted. They may isolate themselves, replaying the moment over and over. They may feel like they ruined everything. This only adds to the confusion for others. Now the INFJ is quiet again, possibly distant. People don't know how to respond. They feel uncertain, like they're standing on shaky ground. This cycle can happen in relationships, at work, or even in public. And it all comes from one thing: pressure. INFJs are not built to take constant stress. Their mind needs space to process. Their body needs calm. When they don't get that, their system breaks. And what comes out is something that feels foreign to everyone involved, including themselves. It's dramatic. It's strange. And it's one more reason people feel like the INFJ mind is impossible to predict or understand. Reason number 6. Their rare, complex processing style isn't easy to follow. One of the most misunderstood things about INFJs is how they think. Their mind works in layers. It doesn't move in a straight line. It connects ideas, emotions, images, and future possibilities all at once. This deep symbolic thinking can lead to powerful insights, but it can also confuse the people around them. INFJs don't just look at what's happening. They look at what it means, where it's going, and how it feels. They pick up small signals and combine them with memory, values, and emotion. What comes out is often accurate, but difficult to explain. They'll say something like, "I just know this won't work," or "I have a bad feeling about this." But when people ask them why, they can't always give a clear answer. That's because their thinking doesn't follow simple logic. It follows internal patterns that only they can see. This makes it hard for others to trust their judgment. People want facts, data, reasons. The INFJ doesn't always have those, at least not in a form others expect. So their ideas are dismissed. Their warnings are ignored. Or worse, they're seen as dramatic or irrational. This makes INFJs feel isolated. They know they're picking up something real, They know their conclusions come from somewhere. But when they can't explain it clearly, they feel frustrated. And when others reject their thoughts, they feel unseen. The complexity of their thinking also shows up in conversations. INFJs may bring up topics in strange order. They'll jump from a current event to a childhood memory to a philosophical point, all in the same sentence. To them, as un term, it all connects. But to others, it feels scattered. They may pause mid-sentence to reword a thought. They may talk slowly, not because they don't know what to say, but because they're translating a storm of ideas into something understandable. That takes time. That takes effort. And it's not always smooth. People get impatient. They think the INFJ is lost or unsure. But the truth is, the INFJ is thinking through 5 different levels at once. They're trying to make something complicated sound simple. This also affects how they make decisions. INFJs don't rush. They need to feel right about their choices. That means going through emotion, logic, ethics, and future outcomes all at the same time. They may take a long time to decide something, then suddenly change course based on a small detail. To others, this looks random. But to the INFJ, it makes perfect sense. That small detail changed the emotional tone or revealed something hidden. Their inner map shifted, so their direction shifted too. That's the thing. INFJs have an inner map, but it's not drawn with lines. It's drawn with meaning. And because most people don't think that way, they don't understand what the INFJ is doing. This difference can cause tension at work, in friendships, and in relationships. People expect simple explanations. They expect fast answers. INFJs can't always give that. They also ask hard questions. Not just, what happened, but why does this keep happening? Not just, what are we doing, but what does this mean in the long run? These deeper questions can make others uncomfortable. They feel too big, too heavy, or too abstract. But INFJs don't ask them to be difficult. They ask them because that's how their mind works. They need to understand things in a full way. If something feels shallow or off, they can't move forward. This depth, this complexity, this constant need for meaning, it drives some people crazy. Especially those who are more straightforward or practical. They don't want to dive that deep. They just want the bottom line. And that's where the gap forms. INFJs aren't trying to be difficult. They're trying to stay true to their mind. But their way of thinking is rare. It's intense. It's layered. And it doesn't always fit into everyday conversations or quick decision-making. This leaves them feeling misunderstood. It also leaves others feeling confused. They're not ignoring logic, they're just using a different kind. One that blends thought and feeling. One that sees the world not as it is, but as it could be. This rare, complex mind is one of the INFJ's greatest gifts. But to others, it can be overwhelming. Hard to follow. And yes, sometimes it drives them insane. Now you understand why the INFJ mind often leaves people feeling overwhelmed, confused, or just emotionally tired. It's not because INFJs are trying to be difficult. It's because they are built differently. Their brain, heart, and instincts all work together in a way that's rare. So rare that only a small % of the population really understands it. The 6 reasons we've explored in this video show how deep the INFJ experience really is. The INFJ mind is not simple, but it's beautiful.